is Micaiah Stevens. I just recorded 20 minutes of video trying to slim this down, so let's just try to redo this really quickly. I've been talking about this Sebastian Lege. I can't, he's French, or I don't know how it says. Anyways, he has this really awesome game development channel. He's working on this coding adventure for an ecosystem, and he put it out on GitHub version 2.0. I'm uploading a 2-hour video of this right here. It's going to take about another 30 minutes to upload and process, so I thought I'd just make a really quick, 5-10 minute video explaining some really. In the 2-hour video, I talk about every sort of piece of code. I walk through every sort of the terrain, the biomes, sort of the approaches that were taken. I talk about Quill's version of the system with the badgers and gnomes. I talk about board to bits forest system. I even talk about my sort of implementation of these systems as well in a 3D environment that sort of Sebastian has. It's really awesome here. So anyways, if you want to see the full 2 hours of talking about that, you can maybe skip around. I don't have timestamps on these, but I pretty much walk through the terrain, walk through the terrain mesh, then walk through the terrain generation. Then I walk through the environment, and then I start walking through the environment, the animals, and then sort of go through the plants and the foxes, and start adding a lot of cool code to that. One of the things in upgrading this, and here's the region map we talked about. We talked about the regions as well at some point, and then sort of chunk systems, and then here's the sort of viewed chunk right here, which he's adding. I think he's trying to add in viewable chunks around you, kind of like Minecraft has. So that's why you can add in these the chunks around you that would chunk your data in. It would add in, it would sort of sub chunk your data, so it would load in just what's around you. Anyway, so we downloaded the project from GitHub in 2019.3. Unity seems to break a lot of things with the code. I've had trouble in the past, so I'm not sure how to do that. It's probably a couple simple things, but they changed a few things, so I haven't tried it in a few weeks. My computer broke, and it's been a while, so I can't remember all the changes, but I'm actually running a 2019.2, which is now it's stable now, so it's the release version. I think that's what the F1 talks about. Anyways, I'm sure it would work in the 2019.1. It should work in the 2018, but it might break. There's not a lot of UI in this game, so it may not break. In 2019 or 2017 might break as well. It may not, may or may not work. But anyways, you just boot up the project. One of the major sort of things you sort of have to do is you go into the scenes. You load up the terrain view here. Which is where we're at, and then you go into the hierarchy, and you need to change the tree under the environment, which is a mono behavior script. There's a tree prefab. You just need to drag the tree object over here onto the tree prefab. It lost its connection. The other thing I would do before I run the game is I would set this to 0.1. It's actually set to 1.0, which means every tile is a tree. It gets sort of overwhelming. The other thing sort of is you have these plants and bunnies, or bunnies and plants. You can also actually set an initial population of 4 for the female bunnies as well, for bunny 1, and you set maybe a 5, or you can actually set a 25 as well, or whatever you want to do. So that you have 50. So you have 50 male, 50. I'm not sure. This sort of feels like it's a 0.75 of the version of the code, because we're missing male and female bunnies. Maybe they're handled through a different way in the code, but it feels, and we don't see the bunnies consuming plants, even though the code's sort of in there and it's not called. So and some of the foxes. Anyway, so the other thing you also need to do under the foxes, you also need to add the animal script to the fox. The prefab doesn't have an animal script, so you can't drag it into the initial population, and you need to set it to a carnivore. We talked about in the video, the 2-hour video, we talked about omnivores, that you could sort of expand the code, and then we added the is male. So On this bunny right here, we just set this bunny to male and this bunny to female. We don't know if that's how the code was set up originally, or the colors, or the intention was. We just sort of said, hey, we got two separate bunnies. We know one's male, one's female. We just arbitrarily chose. The other thing too is we added so that's right here. We just added this variable, is male. This you can definitely tell this is my code because it's like I have the preferable lowercase, uppercase sort of Boolean value. Some people might do B male as well. Oops, sorry, my caps lock hits on. Anyways, you can sort of see we also changed the const of the view distance. We were just trying to do that because we wanted to showcase the fact that the fox could maybe have a view distance of 10, where bunnies have a view distance of 7, or you could have maybe bunnies have a view distance of 15, and foxes have a view distance of 10 or something lower to give bunnies more of an advantage. I don't think that's how it would work in general. Bunnies are just prolific, and that's how they survive. But anyway, so we talk a lot about that in the 2-hour video. So we're just trying to make a really quick video here. And then so once you add in the animal, or to the fox, and sort of make that change to add in the carnivore, because that's what determine, then you can actually drop it in here and add it. And then I also thought about, I didn't talk about it in that video, but we also need to add the male and female plants, and we also added 1,000 plants. Anyways, and that's pretty much it. You also have the seed. We talked a lot about that. We talked about the tree 5%. We talk a lot about the camera, the terrain generation, and the sort of the terrain mesh, which is just a 2,000, or it's 11,000. It's right down here. It's 474,000 vertices. And talked about how many triangles. I guess it's actually in triangles. I was thinking about it differently before. Anyways, so that's triangles. And then we talk about how the terrain generation actually creates the environment and the biomes. The biomes are like the grass biome, the sand biome, and the water biomes, and then the trees sort of fit. I would actually like to see a distinction here where the trees can't grow on sand and they actually have to have one tile difference before the sand. But anyways, that's sort of a neither here nor now. So that should actually get you to actually a pretty good working example here of where you can actually run the game, and then you can actually see I've actually upset the balance here. I think I fixed the trees, and this will actually look a little bit better. But you can actually see now that the plants, the trees, you can actually turn off the debug if you want. I think that should actually, yeah, there we go. So we can get rid of, and then you can go through and see the bunnies, and then you can actually see the foxes. We only have 5 foxes, so that's sort of the balance. Now you can play with the different foxes ideas. So normally they run around. I'm not sure how they run around, but it was running around before. But anyway, so now you got the foxes, plants, and bunnies and trees in the world, and then you can sort of as he upgrades and changes it. And there's also we talked about the sort of the this is where I was talking about the trees spawn on sand, which doesn't make any sense to me, but that would be something. And the plants as well. Maybe the plants would, I don't know. Anyway, so there's a lot more you can do with this. I've added some sort of carnivores or omnivores. Talked about you can have man-eating bunnies if you want. You can also probably add characters to this game. There's a little bit of a challenge here with the environment, where it's like you can sort of, the environment is a XY sort of hex map, or not it's a tile mapped system we talked about. So you have to think about it not in terms of the actual game objects, but the game objects are sitting on these XY coordinates. And we talked quite a bit about that, so it's actually pretty cool. I'm not, a lot of this is like how would I, my question is how would I get the trees not to spawn on sand? There's probably a pretty simple way to do that, but it's just playing with it now. And then as he updates the GitHub, and as he releases his video talking about it, his will be shorter than my 2 hours. But if you're really into coding, want to walk through. I pretty go in depth about a lot of different, crazy concepts of linking a lot of things together you may not think about in terms of game development. it starts at pretty low level and works its way up. So some of it, I was mistaken, I think, in some point where I'm thinking about a terrain. There's a terrain environment, and this is actually a terrain mesh, which are two completely different things. So, I mean, it's very similar in what it's trying to accomplish, but the course, you can't actually use the terrain tools like I thought. I'm pretty sure. But because the terrain, the mesh, it's a mesh deformation is what's changing the actual height. Anyway, so there's a lot of documentation and sort of talking about the idea of this, and sort of how the planets are generated as well. And a lot of, if you're kind of familiar with a lot of Sebastian's code, you can sort of tell that he's really, you can sort of see the different. The other thing too is I should pimp. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I have this whole entire. I have a gaming channel, and then I also have my main programming channel where I have tons of videos. This is kind of, but anyway, so just you'll see tons of videos where I talk about. I don't think I ever listed my Terraria clone, but I'm working on a Terraria clone as well, and yeah, so there's a lot of. So it's kind of like you see Bronze Age as well. It's like it has the same sort of world gen, the new version on a tile-based world gen, where it's like you have deep water, sort of shallow water, and then you have land and you have sand as well. So it's kind of a really good working example in Bronze Age, which is it's on itch.io. Anyways, there's a lot. It's pretty. I want to make this really short, so you didn't have to watch 2 hours. But this pretty much just attach the tree object to the environment, add the animal script to the fox, add in the initial population, add in the male and female bunnies like we talked about with the variable. They're not in use of the code yet, but as he updates the GitHub, more, I'm sure it will be, we can see that he's upgraded, so he's probably got a more cohesive working demo. And I actually have I have a couple different versions where I made my own ecosystem and his ecosystem, so I want to combine the two. So I had cats and trees and all sorts of crazy things. So anyways, thanks very much. I appreciate it. I want to cut this short because I'll talk forever. So if you want to hear the long form 2-hour version where I go into every single detail, I don't think if you have any questions too about that and let me know. I'll try to, there's a lot of reference material. I talked about 4 or 5 different videos. You can also go through and talk about the systems. The board to bit systems is actually a really good one, which talks about these system designs. And the Quill 18 is actually kind of another. It's all sort of the same type of systems that people are talking about. So it's all some are 2D, some are 3D. Sebastian's is actually 3D, which I love. So that's what I converted a lot of the 2D systems into the 3D system, which is kind of, I talked a little bit about that. There's some between the XY system. I don't think that converts over to an XYZ system. So that's kind of one gotcha. But it shouldn't be that. You can actually write a pretty simple conversion that recognizes the fact that the Y should be qualified as a Z, and it should, where it should fit pretty good. And then the Y is just the height, and you could actually program the height into the vector. But he was having trouble with his optimization, so which is kind of where I'm at as well. It's kind of I need to, sort of figure out how to get the system in that big of a world and then optimize it. We're both using chunks. Anyway, so I'm just going to cut this short. If you want to check out the super long video, it's on my channel. In a couple hours, this should be uploaded pretty quickly. Anyways, so that should get you up and running. And then I'm happy to, in this either video, let me know any problems or questions you have, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. You take care.